All right. We're back. Everyone hates us. Except Motomi, but everyone else, pretty dim. Anyway, he went to the same entrance as before and ran up the stairs without stopping. He reached the top floor, gasping for breath, but pushed open the door and stepped out onto the roof without a moment's pause. The heavy, humid wind seemed to cling to his cheeks and his hands. Ooh, nice music. He walked across the dirty gray concrete, making his way to the far edge of the empty roof. The sky held the promise of rain. Toshima's cityscape, which had always been devoid of color, looked even darker and grayer than usual. Still, even this view was refreshing compared to the feelings that were stagnating in his chest. He sat down, taking slow, deep breaths, and clasped his hands together between bent knees. Through half-closed eyes, he watched the city. Even now, people down there were struggling to live, to win, because the alternatives were too frightening. He couldn't see it from all the way up here, but everything was in motion, shifting, changing. Keisuke was like a different person now, and even Rin. But perhaps, in truth, it was only a matter of perspective. He thought he knew them, but all he'd really known was a single facet of who they were. Beneath his skin, a person's emotions were in a constant state of flux, pulsing and writhing, swelling and contracting. That is very weird. That's a weird way to explain, but I guess swelling and contracting. In response to inner and outer stimuli. Okay, girl, we gotta talk about language. By the time they reached the surface, they might have assumed a different shape entirely. Like love turning to hate, perhaps those emotions had a different shape, their essence was the same. When he looked at it that way, he started to think that maybe Keisuke and Rin only seemed different now because his perception of them had been biased from the start. He let out a quiet breath and looked up at the sky. Something lay at the root of their hatred. That thing, whatever it was, hadn't changed. It simply looked different now. Yeah, it looks like you. Like, I don't understand why everyone is always misdirecting their anger towards Akira. He's doing nothing. Like, bro, come on. Did he have something like that too? Maybe it was growing even now, evolving into some new shape which he could not yet. There came a soft noise behind him. He turned around.
Rin?
Rin! Oh, I'm so glad. Rin was standing at the door to the roof. He gave Akira a guilty look, then dropped his eyes to the concrete. His expression was clouded, but lacked the hatred from before. He appeared to be back to his usual self. Do you want... Do you want me to leave? After a short, hesitant pause, he raised his head and looked straight at Akira. I figured. Want to talk about it? Akira simply nodded. Rin cocked his head. He looked taken aback. He must have come expecting an interrogation. It was true that Akira had questions, but at the same time, he felt that it would be wrong to pry. Rin lowered his gaze, a complicated expression on his face. Do you want me to ask? I want to know, but I also respect you. Rin's tone was at once self-deprecating and accusatory. Although Akira had no way of knowing what Rin's relationship with his teammates had been like, it was easy to guess from this how they'd welcomed his return. Watching Rin gnaw at his lower lip, he thought that maybe it had been wrong to ask. But this was what he wanted to know more than anything else. What was his connection with Shiki, the most feared man in Toshima? After a short silence, Rin spoke. Oh, babe, I already know. His voice was so small it seemed to fade into the night. Oh, Rin, it's okay. Rin bit his lip harder, appearing both furious and on the verge of tears, and shook his head and raised his eyes. For a moment it looked as though he would speak, but he closed his mouth without saying a word. Then turned and ran through the open door. Oh, Rin, it's okay. Please come back. Akira listened to the sound of his footsteps racing down the staircase, then walked to the edge of the roof. There was no fence to block his view. When he looked out over the edge, he saw Rin emerge from the entrance on the street. He was gone in an instant, swallowed by a narrow alley. Akira let out a deep breath. He'd sensed Rin's turmoil in the alley with Shiki. Rin had seemed desperate, confused by his own thoughts and actions. What had driven Rin into such a state? He wanted to know, but at the same time he felt a premonition of danger, as if his curiosity were leading him toward a forbidden border marked only by a single piece of string. Rin's smile concealed turbulent passions, whose nature an outsider could not hope to guess. And yet, Akira looked at the sky. The clouds were dark and heavy, just like the weight on his heart. He glanced at the street again and froze. A man in blue coveralls was walking down this road. No! Hide! 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 The next thing he knew, he was running for the door. Oh wait, there's no use hiding. Keisuke can smell him. He dashed down the stairs and out onto the street. There, a glimpse of blue-clad... Oh yeah, I remember. I forgot that we were still chasing after death. My first thought was, fucking run! It follows! But, oh well. He dashed down the stairs and out onto the street. There, a glimpse of blue-clad back vanishing around the corner of an alley. Akira gave chase. The sky was black with the promise of rain. The frail light of a dying street lamp flickered in the darkness. A stench rose around him, the stench of the city, but thicker than ever before. The alley Keisuke had entered was perfectly straight and narrow. As Akira stepped inside, his heart jumped in his chest. A man stood on the opposite end, facing him. At this distance, it was hard to see his face in the darkness, but Akira didn't need to see to know who it was. It was Keisuke. Breathing was hard, apprehension was crushing his lungs, but he soldiered through and approached, eyes set, jaw firm. A raindrop struck his fist. First, a few black stains dotted the ground, then they grew to cover it. The storm had begun, yet he couldn't hear its thunder or feel its cold beat on his skin. The space where he and Keisuke stood was utterly silent and still. Hi. His coveralls dark and heavy with rain. Keisuke welcomed him with a grin. Keisuke slowly spread his arms, tilting his head up toward the sky as if to catch the rain. What the fuck does that even mean? Also, this rain is my first shower in days. He fixed Akira with the eyes of a predator, drunk on the joy of the chase. Though his heart was like a hammer in his chest, Akira met his stare and unflinching. Oh my god, I just realized none of them ever brushed their teeth. I'm sorry if I just ruined everything for everyone. Oh god, this is why I could never watch Outlander and think it was hot. Oh god. I have a problem. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get over it. It's fine. They probably brush their teeth in between scenes. They just don't show it, okay? Let's just go with that. They totally brush and floss and everything, okay? Though his heart was like a hammer in his chest, Akira met his stare unflinching. Something was building in the pit of his stomach, something that drove back the cold of the rain. Keisuke closed the distance with sauntering steps until he was close enough for Akira to see the water dripping from his chin. The savage hunger in Keisuke's grin set Akira's hair on end. There could be no mistake. Keisuke wanted him dead. This would be his last chance. He had no clever plan, no confidence this would work. But there was only one path open to him now. He had no choice but to take it. I think this is stupid. His resolve reaffirmed. He opened his mouth to speak. Oh, Akira. Keisuke's eyebrows rose. Yeah. What he needed to do now was as plain as day. He had been thinking about it ever since Keisuke had vanished. He took a deep breath, exhaled, and said,
"お前のことだ."
Oh my god! I love you! The smile vanished from Keisuke's face. His voice dropped a note lower.
俺がどうしたって
Oh, I love you.
お前がいなくなって
I realized something.
気づいたことがある。お前が俺にとってどういう存在だったのか。
I want my housewife back. He couldn't tell if his words were getting through. Rain seemed to trap its users in an endless cycle of negative thoughts and emotions. But those emotions were what had driven Keisuke to Rain in the first place. 1,000 tiny misunderstandings that had over time carved a deep canyon between them. Perhaps it was already too late. Nevertheless, he couldn't bring himself to give up. Even if Keisuke wouldn't hear him out, he still wanted to tell him.
今まで俺は全てがどうでもいいと思って生きてきた。自分も他人も死のうが生きようが関係ない。死なないから生きてるだけで生きてる意味も特にない。ずっと不思議だったんだ。生きることに執着する奴らが。なら死ぬってどういうことなのか。
We all go through similar
それがわから
thoughts
なかった。
during puberty. Just hit your 25s and it'll be fine. Your brain will be fully formed by then.
ブラスターも殺人は不可だ。俺がイグラに参加することを決めた理由もそこにあった。
冤罪を晴らすためだけじゃないのか。
それもある。けど興味があった。命が消える瞬間、殺す側はどう思うのか。ブラスターでいくら戦っても何も感じられなかった。だから殺人も可能なイグラなら何かがあるのかもしれない。そう。
最低な理由だな。エゴだろ結局は。そりゃ
What the
確
fuck?
かに人を殺すのは楽しいけどさ。
How is him looking for meaning in his life fucked up, but what you're saying fine?
たまらないよ。
Bruh,
考えるだけでゾクゾクする。
bruh. Keisuke raised one hand and curled it into a fist, as though to crush the raindrops on his palm.
そうだな。自分勝手な理由だ。だけど俺が何も感じなかったのはブラスターが殺人不可だったからじゃない。
Yeah,
もっと根本的な部分だ。
that makes sense.
ホテルでお前と言い争ってお前が出て行った時に思ったんだ。
You realized what was truly important?
なんだよ。
言いたかったのはこんなことじゃないって。
Once again, Keisuke's smile vanished. The malice in his eyes was far stronger than before. Akira continued all the same.
そう思ったのは初めてだった。今まで人にどう思われても気にしたことなんてなかった。お前、俺がお前につきまとわれて嫌がってるってそう思ってたんだろう。
Keisuke spat out a short, sharp breath, as if he couldn't believe Akira would ask such a stupid question. His smile had returned, but his eyes blazed with pure hatred.
思ってたさ。当たり前だろ。俺は弱かったし、お前の後について回るばかりだったからさ。アキラだってどうでもいいから俺のことほっといた。
Well, no, I liked you, which is why I cared enough to try and get you away from here.
内心嫌がってて。けど勝手にくっついてくるペットが何かぐらい
If
の
that were the case, I would have let you
俺がオロ
die!
オロしてんのを見
Multiple
て
times!
笑ってたんだろ。
What the fuck? What? How do you really think I'm that kind of person?
俺が嫌な相手とわざわざ一緒に行動するようなそんな器用な人間だと思うか。俺はお前を嫌だと思ったことなんて一度もない。けどそういう卑屈なところだけは
Yeah.
嫌だった。
Yeah. Exactly.
卑屈？
いつもお前は俺なんかって口癖みたいに言ってた。俺はそれがすごく嫌だった。比べる必要なんかない。 圭介は圭介だろ。
Okay, yeah, I agree. But the first thing I thought, I never really noticed that before. But what I actually thought about was that attitude of like, I do whatever you say because you're the best of the best, but also I want to decide everything we do. It's just so hypocritical. Just be you, Keisuke. Stop putting everything on me, making me your entire center of the universe, okay, please? You're still doing it, even now. Low, dry laughter reached Akira through the rain.
そんなのはな、お前が上に立ってるから言えるセリフなんだよ。
Huh?
虐げられたことがないから、下にいる人間がどういう気持ちかわからないから。
What does that have to do with
そんな
anything?
こと言えるんだよ。
Someone had said something similar to him once before. Takeru.
俺はさ、弱かったけど俺なりに頑張ってたんだよ。あれでもさ、けどお前は俺のことなんか見向きもしなかった。お前はお前以外何も見てなかった。
Okay, but, counter argument, if you hated my way of being that much, you know, that's like everything Akira is. Akira is the edgy, I don't care about anything kind of guy, right? If you don't like that about him, you know, if you can't look past that weird spiel he's always, you know, pursuing, whatever, if you can't look past that and take that for full and don't mind that, you know, like, kind of like, you liked him for being Akira, right? And now you're saying like, I never liked you at all. That doesn't make sense. Know what I mean? Oh god, I'm so bad at articulating my thoughts. So basically what I'm trying to say is, like, if you are so mad at his whole behavior, why would you run after him so obsessively? Like, there's no reason to. You don't run after people you purely hate. You know what I mean? I know love and hate are very closely related, but also, like, come on, man.
だからさ、
This don't make any sense.
だったら強くなってやろうと思ったんだよ。
And stronger than Taya! With a sneer, he held a hand out in Akira's direction.
見てみろよ今。お前の頭を軽くひねりつぶすぐらいわけないぜ。
You know,
そうしたら思った通り。
it's not...
お前は俺を見た。
Dude, it's not about you being strong. It's about you actually leaving my side. I never once had to fear you leaving me. This is the first time I realized, oh, Keisuke can actually choose not to be with me. That is the point in all of this.
アキラ、わかってる？俺はさ、お前が憎くてたまら
That's
ない
not
んだ
true and
よ。
you know it. You love me.
だからさ、お前も憎めよ。俺を気づいたとか気づかないとか
Not possible.
舐めたこと言ってんだよ。
I like you too much.
俺はお前が力を手に入れたからお前を見たわけじゃない。
But because you're the one that got away. The one.
これまではただそばにいるのが当たり前だと思ってたんだ。
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to read. Hang on. It had never been about who was stronger or weaker. That meant nothing to Akira. All his victories in Blaster, all the praise he'd earned, had not given him satisfaction. Instead, it had been the little things. A few words exchanged in the back alley after a match. The comfort of being with someone who didn't have an agenda. Moments that had blended into the background because they hadn't set his soul on fire, because that's how he told himself meaning should feel. Oh my god. All of this is what you realize once you become an adult. Like, I remember so vividly realizing all of this myself. At some point, yeah. Only after it was gone had he realized that what was there, what is really meaningful, what real happiness is. Happiness isn't something that is always there and is always so insanely potent. It's just the little things. Like drinking a coffee in your kitchen and looking outside and watching birds. Or seeing your cat follow you around even though he's sleepy. It's the little things that make you happy. It was like the very air he
お前
breathed.
がホテルを飛び出していった時、あの時はなんだか無性にイラついてて言葉が止まらなかった。それで後悔したんだ。生まれて初めて年まではぐれたら次は死体で会うことになったっておかしくない。その時思った。俺は何も知らないって。圭介が俺のことをどう思ってたのか。俺は圭介の何を知ってるのか。
He looks so creepy. I'm so sorry. He just looks so fucked up.
俺はむやみに他人とつるむのは好きじゃない。けどそばにいて嫌だと思わない相手なら
Took you for granted.
一緒にいたいと思う。お前とは一緒にいることがいつの間にか当たり前になってた。
It's easy to take someone for granted who's so willing to serve themselves up on a silver platter.
お前に何かを求めてたわけじゃない。ただ圭介は圭介としてそのままでいればいいって、そう言いたかった。本当は嘘だ。
Excuse me? Keisuke's murmur was so quiet it was nearly swallowed by
嘘
the
じゃない。
rain.
だからお前が自分を卑下するのが理解できなかった。
Also, why should Akira lie? And thus they had slipped further and further away from each other. They had been together for such a long time that it had become a matter of course, and neither of them had stopped to see what the other was truly
そう
thinking.
いうことに気づいて分かったが、どうして人が生きることに執着するのか。何か譲れないもののために生きたいと思うんだ。守りたいもの、欲しいもの、何でもいい。それがやっと分かった。
やめろよ。今さらそういうこと言うの。さっきも言っただろ。俺はお前が憎いんだよ、アキラ。
お前が俺のことをどう思ってても仕方がないと思う。けど俺は圭介。
He stopped to let out a breath.
俺はお前と一緒にここから出たい。だから死ぬわけにはいかない。俺もお前もだ。
やめろ。
Keisuke cried out, his face a twisted
今
mask.
さら何寝ぼけたこと言ってんだよ。もう遅いんだよ。
Because he took the drug? I know that it's horrible to get clean. They mentioned something like that before, but it is possible. His smile returned abruptly, and he pulled something from behind his back.
これ
Yo!
お前ないか。
Yo, that's Takeru's knife, isn't it? Yo, what is that stance, bro? It was an oversized knife. Its blade long and wide. Takeru's weapon.
思い出したが、あの青髪のやつのだよ。結構使いやすいんだよ
Oh god.
な。もう何人ぐらいやったかな、これ。
You should really clean the blood off, though. It rusts the blade really easy and it becomes dull. Keisuke. STD! Oh my god, what is all this blood licking in this game? His smile growing
あいつ
wider.
の死体見たか。俺がやったんだよ。あいつの手握りつぶして、
Oh my
顔
god.
もひねりつぶしてやった。
That's
す
so
ごい
fucked
だ
up.
ろ。あいつの怯えきった顔、ゾクゾクきたよ。今でも思い出して
Too much information, bro. Yikes.
やめろ。
Takeru's image rose in Akira's mind, a pitifully shrunken shape slumped against the wall of a dark alley. He hadn't actually seen Takeru's face, but his imagination was capable of greater detail than memory could hope to achieve. It showed him a nightmare of ruined flesh, pulped like the meat of a pomegranate.
俺を憎めよ、アキラ。俺を殺そうと思うよ。
Why?
俺がお前を憎んでる。お前も俺を憎めよ。
I refuse to hate
生ぬるい
you.
感情に左右されるな。
He knew Keisuke was trying to provoke
で
him.
さ、お前はもっとひどい殺し方しようと思ってるんだよ。
I am scared to find out because in the way this game has been going.
爪を一枚一枚剥いで。
Okay, that's the kind of torture I'm
指も全部切り取って
not down for, but you know what I
体中の穴と
mean?
いう穴に突っ込んで。
Oh, okay, never mind. Never mind.
気が狂うまで死ぬまで犯すっていうのとかさ。
Okay, never mind. Oh, Jesus.
本当は好きなの。
Excuse me? Disgust surged through him, and he gripped the hilt of his knife. He knew that he was playing right into Keisuke's hands. He knew, and yet...
アキラ、早くこっちに来いよ。
Yo! With a fierce roar, Keisuke charged. His knife slashed toward Akira's neck, cleaving sheets of rain as it came. With not a moment to spare, Akira jumped back, then whipped his own knife out of its sheath and held it at the ready. An attempt to parry numbed his arms to the bone. Sensing that he risked losing his weapon, he withdrew the foot he had used to lunge and turned his body away from Keisuke's strike. Actually crossing blades left him shocked by the increase in Keisuke's abilities. His speed had reached a whole new level. But would he wouldn't have any technique though, right? Keisuke's howl was thick with joy. He came in hard, striking from every angle. Unable to detect any gaps in his attacks, Akira was forced to remain on the defensive. Keisuke had a better build than him. Now that he was also Akira's equal, or faster in terms of speed, it was a struggle just to hold him off. The rain was like needles against Akira's skin. Unable to brace himself on the wet ground, he slipped and almost lost his footing. Keisuke's blade passed scant centimeters from his nose, and a spray of rain caught him in the face. The shockwave left in the heavy blow's wake stung the surface of his skin. Okay. The attacks kept coming one after another. He showed no sign of fagging. I'm not enjoying this! Akira raised his knife with both hands to block Keisuke's falling slash. The impact tore through his body like an electric shock. Keisuke snarled past their grinding blades. No! Fuck no! His arms shook as he pressed against Keisuke's strength. He cried out with all the force he could muster, squeezing his voice through gritted teeth. Oh, that face just now. Oh! Rage twisted Keisuke's features. Duh. I don't give a fuck what you want. Okay, that's sorry. With a roar, Keisuke thrust his knife forward, aiming a heavy blow at Akira's gut. This time, Rage made his attack wild. Akira instantly saw his plan and matched the flow of his movements to deflect his blade to one side. The force of it staggered Akira too, but he didn't miss his chance to seize Keisuke's shoulders and wrist. He applied leverage, locking the joints and dragged Keisuke to the ground. Ooh. Damn, son! Keisuke landed hard on his back. The impact drove the air from his lungs. He bucked, fighting to tear his wrist free. Realizing that he couldn't hang on like this, Akira quickly straddled Keisuke's torso. With his right knee, he pinned Keisuke's left shoulder with his left hand, while his left fought to control Keisuke's knife. When Keisuke tried to get up, he grabbed Keisuke's head with his right hand and forced it to the ground. Ooh, damn! Akira! Go get him! Nice! Keisuke glared at him, eyes blazing with fury. Akira was panting, his heart beating out a fast, lunatic rhythm. Against Keisuke's beastly strength, it was all Akira could do to keep his knife at bay. His face contorted with rage, Keisuke tried to bite the arm, pressing his head against the ground. Ooh. Oh god, he's gonna bite his arm off. It was like fighting a wild animal. He acted quickly to avoid Keisuke's teeth, but Keisuke, blinded by anger, refused to give up. He felt his heart skip a beat. But his plea fell on deaf ears. Keisuke was fighting like mad to break free. If Akira focused on avoiding his teeth, he risked losing his grip on Keisuke's knife hand. The rain beat down without mercy. He didn't think he could last much longer. As Keisuke threw himself from side to side, Akira's fingers finally slipped off his wrist. Scorching heat blossomed on Akira's palm. The blade had broken his skin. Red droplets fell from the wound to land on Keisuke's cheek. Make him drink it! 2 drops. 3. They mingled with the rain, which washed them inexorably towards... They slipped between his parted lips! You made him drink your blood, Akira. Now you have one. Keisuke, who had been scowling suspiciously at the change in Akira's demeanor, suddenly went rigid. He flung Akira off him with unbelievable strength. So Akira already noticed what his blood does. Convulsions racked his body, spraying Akira with water from the ground. Akira felt strangely detached, as though he were watching from a great distance. Keisuke's scream pulled him back to reality. It felt like a knife ripping through his soul. His vision tunneled, as though he were experiencing vertigo. He could barely make out what was happening. There seemed no end to Keisuke's agony. The groans and splashing went on and on. Akira's left hand throbbed, dripping red water. Red water. Blood. This had happened before, to the silver-haired man who'd attacked him, and to Takeru. Both had succumbed to sudden fits of pain, just like Keisuke was experiencing now. Rain. All of them had been taking it. That had to be the connection. Rain and your blood! That, and Akira's blood! Yeah. Takeru had bit him on the lip. The silver-haired man had licked his blade after stabbing him in the arm. He had watched his blood drip into Keisuke's mouth, and each time the same reaction. It couldn't be a coincidence. Was it his fault? Did his blood make people suffer? If there was any other possibility, he couldn't see it. Even if it did, it's not like it's your fault. These people tried to kill you. You know? I'm just saying. Who cares if it's your fault or not? Well, fault is such a strange word in this context. He didn't know how much time had passed. Okay, I was feeling bad for you, Kei-chan, but that was horrible. Keisuke was on his knees, raking at his throat. He tried to push himself up, but crumpled. Tried a few more times with the same result, but finally he managed to lurch to his feet and staggered off into the rain. Akira knew that he had to go after him, but his body refused to listen. Those are not nice sounds to have in your ear. From the sound of Keisuke's splashing footsteps, he could tell he'd broken into a run.
Keisuke!
Oh, Akira. By the time he'd managed to croak out a whisper, Keisuke blended into the darkness of the alley. He could see nothing but the rain. He'd failed. His voice hadn't reached Keisuke, nor had his feelings. This has to be bad ending, right? A hot lump sealed his throat. He clenched his teeth, but his sobs leaked out anyway. Oh! He had begun to get up, but he sank back down, pressing his cheek against the wet asphalt. He imagined every part of him melting away, leaking from his fingers and toes, carried off by the rain. Oh God, that is such a feeling. The ceaseless drumming grew until it filled his mind. He could think of nothing else. Oh, the rain beat down, time and sensation melted into its roar. It seemed as if there was nothing else in the world. But then he heard a light, splashing noise. It came as if from a great distance, as if passing through layers of rain. Footsteps. It took him a moment to recognize the sound. The moment he realized what it was, a piercing voice shook his numbed ears.
Akira!
Rin! Rin! He knew this voice. Who was it? At last, a human presence drew near, and he felt warmth on his cold, frozen skin. Only then did he realize that it was Rin! Rin! Rin put an arm around his shoulders and eased him into an upright position. A glimpse of brilliant blue and gold touched his eyes, which until then had only seen long slashes of rain. Rin peered at Akira, large eyes blinking. They widened as he caught sight of the blood flowing from Akira's left hand.
怪我してるし。
大したことない。
It's nothing. His voice was borderline inaudible, as if illness had worn down his throat. The cold penetrated to his very bones, but at the same time it seemed somehow distant, as if it were happening to someone else. Rin looked off to the side and frowned. He was gazing at Takeru's knife, which Keisuke had dropped, and Akira's knife, which also lay on the sudden ground.
どうしちゃったの?
He left? Keisuke, the moment Akira heard his name, the word abruptly came into focus. He quickly tried to get up, but his body ached horribly. He grimaced at the pain.
何やってんの? いきなり動いちゃダメだよ.
Keisuke. Akira squinted into the darkness surrounding them, but no matter how he tried, he saw nothing but the shapes of crumbling buildings and no sign of the person he sought. Anger and regret seared his flesh. He drove his fist into the pavement, sending up a splash of water. Oh yeah, you're not hurt enough, right? Oh god. Sorry.
なんか途中で変だったよね、ケイスケ。
Yeah. You saw him?
見てたのか。
ずっとじゃないけど、俺が来た時は二人が取っ組み合ってて。したら、ケイスケが急に苦しみ出したから。
Bitter lump rose in Akira's throat. He couldn't possibly tell Rin that his own blood had done this. After all, he himself hardly believed
ケイス
it.
ケはやっぱりライン使ってたのかな。
Yeah. The ache in his chest grew stronger, forcing a breath from his lungs. He closed his eyes against the pain. A sad shadow fell upon Rin's face. He'd gotten his answer. Akira had tried. He'd said everything he could possibly say, and Keisuke's heart had remained close to him. Keisuke had rejected him, and all that remained now was regret and despair. His spirit no longer had the strength to give chase.
あれ?
Rin blinked as he caught sight of something next to Akira.
タグじゃない。もしかしてケイスケの?
Is it Takeru's? Akira looked. The tag was lying on the ground, pummeled by the rain. Picked it up. The chain was broken. Keisuke must have torn it off during his seizure. Akira realized with a fresh pang of guilt.
それ、エース?
Rin's voice was strangely flat. He was staring intently at the tag in Akira's hand. Akira checked the tag. Yeah?
Oh.
Did he have an ace? I feel like he had a 10, no? He cast a wary look at Rin, sensing that something had changed. Those cold, expressionless eyes were watching him once again.
アキラさ、あと2つジャック持ってるよね。
Yeah? Noah's voice dropped in pitch and a feverish light crept into
ど
his
うして知
gaze.
ってる？
アキラ、ホテルのロビーで落としてたっしょ。タグの束。
Perhaps he did. It didn't matter. He tightened his grip on the tag without thinking and readied himself to move at a moment's notice.
それ、ちょうだい。
Why? Rin cocked his head and held out his hand like a child begging his parent for a gift. His gestures were innocent, but cold flames burned in his eyes.
ちょうだい。俺にそれ。必要だから。
Why? For what?
くれないなら。
He raised his chin, eyes still locked on Akira, and drew something from the pouch of his waist. Catching the glint of Rin's stilettos, Akira instantly sprang to his feet. He dropped onto a low stance and retreated several paces to pick up his knife.
くれないなら、殺すよ。
Why, Rin? Also, I love your knives. They're called stilettos? I love that. Rin smiled thinly. Blades crossed before his face. I don't believe you would kill me. The next second, his slender body burst into action, flying toward Akira at an unthinkable speed. He slashed mercilessly through the curtain of pouring rain. Akira whipped out his knife to parry the attack. Their weapons met with a shrill screech of metal. The sound quickly faded into the roar of the storm. Undaunted by the force of Akira's parry, Rin landed on his back foot and immediately lashed out with 2 strikes in quick succession. His blows carried little weight on their own, however their sheer speed and number was overwhelming, like facing down a wall of arrows. On top of that, every single one of his attacks was aimed precisely at a vital organ. Rin leaned slightly to the left, drawing his arm back and reversing his grip on his stiletto. This led into a fierce upward slash. Akira managed to deflect the razor-sharp tip just before it reached his throat. He was struggling. His battle with Keisuke had left him drained, unable to respond with his usual dexterity. Rin leapt back, leaving some distance between them. Akira's breath was ragged with exertion and horror. He had known that there was facets to Rin's personality. He had known that Rin himself was conflicted about his actions, but Akira could not have imagined that Rin would turn on him with so little fanfare. Hearing the words that slipped unwittingly from Akira's mouth, Rin blinked once, then curved his lips into a chilly smile.
なんだかんだでさ、タグって結構集まらないもんなんだよ。豚ばっか。アキラの持ってるタグとそのケイスケのタグが手に入れば、ジャックが3つにエースが2つ。フルハウスだ。
So, you couldn't even beat Shiki and you want to go up against Eel-Ray? Why?
お前さ、つくづく甘いよな。前にも忠告してやったよな。簡単に人を信じるなって。俺の演技、そんなに真に迫ってた？
Do you really want to kill yourself that bad?
演技だよ、何もかも。
We all know that's not true. Rin's eyes narrowed sharply. This was a side of him Akira had never seen. He had threatened Akira before, after the encounter with Shiki, but then he had been wild with anger. Now he was calm, collected, sure. I don't know about this, lads. Had Rin been deceiving him the entire time?
アキラは最初からノーマークだったんだけどな。そんなにイグラに夢中になってるわけでもなさそうだったし、ちょっとくらい遊んでやっても邪魔にはならないと思ってさ。
目的？
ああ、俺がイグラに参加した本当の理由、教えてやろうか。
Yeah. Rin stopped there and studied his reaction as if hoping that Akira would beg for the answer. The reason he joined Igra, before Rin had told him that his team had disbanded and he'd come to Toshima to find something more exciting than a blaster. I feel like he just followed the people, right? No, it seemed that wasn't the real story. Had every one of Rin's words been a lie? Yeah. Yeah, we knew that, Rin. That's not a surprise. His voice was as cool as ever, but the pale blue of his eyes flickered slightly. His dead friends, he must mean his team. According to Tomoyuki, it was Rin's fault the team had collapsed.
そんな顔しなくても分かってるよ。智之から聞いてるんだろ、大体は。
Rin raised his chin, sneering.
俺のミスで仲間が死んだのは事実だ。けど、俺は裏切ったわけじゃない。騙されたんだ。だから、俺はずっとそいつを殺すために、その一瞬のために生きてきた。相打ちになったって構わない。ずっとだ。
So your beef is with Eel-Ray? What does Shiki have to do with all this? Is Shiki Eel-Ray? Like what? His knuckles shone with white upon the grips of his stilettos. Stealing Akira's tags would let him claim his revenge? Akira's eyes widened. The invincible champion, cloaked in mystery, if he was the one who had tricked Rin and murdered his friends. Rin closed his mouth and stared at the ground, lapsing into silence. Slowly he lowered his stilettos to his side. The rain continued to pound the earth, as if to fill the empty space between them. Rin's voice broke through the sound of the rain. His eyes were still fixed on his feet. Yeah. I knew it! I fucking called it. Sorry I called you Team Borscht, but I couldn't remember Pesikoshka, okay? You know what? I'm going to write that down, otherwise it's just gonna be Borscht from now on. Never mind, I don't have a pen. It's gonna be Borscht, I'm sorry. Akira recalled the story he'd heard from D. Pesikoshka had been the strongest team in Blaster, feared for their brutality.
容赦のない暴力的な集団としても有名だった。やられたら倍にしてやり返す。それが心情だった。敵を徹底的にねじ伏せて力の差を見せつける。生ぬるい手は使わない。そうやってエリアゴーストからのし上がって名を馳せてきた。
He spoke as if he'd seen this happen in person. Obviously, the rain suddenly began to fall harder, beating even more harshly against Akira's frozen skin.
ヘッドは通称コート。意味はオス猫。
Tomcat? Rin lifted his gaze and looked straight at Akira, his lips slowly curved into a man-eating grin.
俺のことだよ。
Ooh, ooh. Hang on. Coat. So Tomcat. Okay, coat meaning Tomcat. So Tomcat was like Akira is called Lost in Blaster. He was Tomcat. Okay. Ah, okay. So you were the leader? I thought the other guy was the leader. Oh well. That instant, Rin sprang forward again. Too fast, in the blink of an eye, he slipped past Akira's guard. His blades closed in, wolves hungry for prey. Akira leapt back, knowing he couldn't blunt Rin's momentum, but Rin struck from both sides, each blow a brilliant flash in the night. I feel like Rin is not fighting for real. I know that he wants the tags and everything, but I feel like he's not fighting for real. Each time Akira fended one of his jabs, each time he jumped further back, his muscles screamed in pain, chains of exhaustion dragged at his limbs. Rin's roar was a flare of murderous anger. Their weapons crashed together loudly. During the rare pauses in between attacks, Akira saw something that chilled him. Rin was smiling. His lips were contorted into a tight, narrow smile, as if he were enjoying the fight from the bottom of his heart. That was when Akira found himself wondering if everything Rin had just told him was true. Something in his chest grew cold, even colder than his frozen skin. It was as if the conflict in his heart had fallen away from him, leaving only blackness behind. And then Akira broke his guarded stance and forced his way within Rin's striking range. The timing of his maneuver was downright suicidal, but at the same time he felt nothing, not doubt, no fear, nor hesitation. With a triumphant shout, Rin slashed viciously downward at point-blank range, but Akira paid his attack no heed. At the same time, he lashed out with his knife. Before Rin's stilettos could reach their mark, Akira's knife laid open his left thigh. Okay. Rin's blue eyes went wide. He staggered, then collapsed to the ground. There was a muted splash. Before he could get up, Akira jumped on top of him and landed a heavy blow in the pit of his stomach. Ooh. Quiet down, Rin. Rin's arms fell to his side. For a second, his resistance ceased. Seizing this chance, Akira quickly knocked Rin's weapons away, then pinned his hands together above his head. How dare you call me the piece of shit? How dare you? Rin's eyes were filled with hatred, but pain made him unable to focus. Even now that he had control, Akira's mind felt icy cold, as if he were piloting his body remotely. As Rin shrieked and fought to break free, Akira punched him in the stomach again. Quiet down, Rin. We need to talk. Rin grit his teeth and continued to struggle. But then, all of a sudden, his strength gave out. His body fell limp and his eyes closed, like a robot that had lost its source of power. No! That's too much, Akira! As silence closed in around them, it felt like the rain had doubled in strength. Rin was unconscious. Akira reached down to brush wet, matted hair away from his forehead. As though following the streaks of rain upon his skin, Akira slid his hand from Rin's forehead to his cheek, to his jaw, to his chest. He reached inside Rin's shirt. There was something thin and hard there, attached to the end of a chain. Akira tore the tag free. The letter carved on it was an A. His hand tightened around the tag before he dropped it into his jacket pocket. He looked back at Rin. Blood flowed from the wound on his thigh, mingling with the rainwater. Akira's heart had begun to race, as if he were only just now experiencing the exhilaration of battle. Rin's gash was deeper than he thought. It might prove life-threatening if he didn't treat it. He sheathed his knife and stood on unsteady feet, slipping his arms around Rin's shoulders and under his knees. A sharp pain lanced through his left hand. The wound from Keisuke's knife was still raw, but at the same time his pain didn't matter. He lifted Rin off the ground. His slim form was light, although his clothes were sodden with water. Despite Akira's exhaustion, he had no trouble carrying him. I hope you took all the weapons, like seriously. When he turned to glance back at the alley, he saw Keisuke fleeing into the darkness. Keisuke! An illusion. A memory burned into his eyes. Oh. Despair rose inside him. He shut his eyes hard, forcing it down, then slowly started walking. Yeah. Oh, patch up Rin, please. Carrying Rin, he made for the first abandoned building that looked reasonably stable. His stamina was at its limit. The double doors at the front entrance stood wide open. To the left he saw a small row of post boxes. They were stuffed with flyers and postcards overflowing to litter the floor. Oops. He went past the stairs to the second floor and headed for the room at the end of the corridor. The door was half open and warped quite badly. He kicked it open the rest of the way and stepped inside, where the smell of dust and mold welcomed him. The room was silent, empty, and larger than he thought. There was nothing to catch his attention aside from broken windows and the pitiful strips of cloth that had once been curtains. There was another door at the back of the room, but he couldn't bring himself to care what was behind it. He set Rin down on the floor near the middle of the room, then removed Rin's waist pouch and set it aside. It would only get in the way. Rin had been pale to begin with. Now his rain-chilled skin was so white that Akira could see his veins. His eyes remained closed, but the rise and fall of his chest told Akira that he was still alive. The wound on his thigh looked awful. Akira scanned the room for something to stop the bleeding. There, the tattered curtains flapping in the wind that howled through the... There, the tattered curtains flapping in the wind that howled through the broken windows. He slit the fabric of the curtain rods, ripped it into thin strips, and used it to bind Rin's thigh. He wrapped the wound on his own left hand too, just in case. Only then could he finally relax. He let out a sigh and raked a hand through his drenched bangs, then turned to the windows. The rain didn't seem likely to let up soon. As he gazed up at the dark sky, memories flashed past, as heavy as the clouds. Rin's dramatic transformation, the smile he'd shown as they crossed blades. Perhaps that was his true self. It was hard not to think that he'd been lying all along. But was that really so? He thought back to that night on the roof where Rin had shown him the Toshiman cityscape for the first time. He thought back to the words Rin had spoken while gazing up at the sky. He couldn't believe that those words had been a lie, that the look of awe on Rin's face had been a mask. I feel like Rin is very traumatized, and everything that you've witnessed, even the mask bits, you know, the happy mask, I feel like all of it is Rin. He is a good actor, yes. But it's like a good actor, you know, like acting doesn't mean playing a role. Acting means like, you know, real actors, or like the way that you're acting, like really good acting, is just like tapping into your own memories, right? Into your own feelings and thoughts, right? And emotions. So I feel like it wasn't an act. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just that I feel like actors, it always kind of like makes it look like, oh, this is all fake, you know, this is all lying and all that. It doesn't have to be fake just because it's an act, you know. But then Whitehead Rin attacked him. He couldn't tell what was true and what was false. He felt lost, as if he'd wandered into a dense blanket of fog. I feel like that Rin is very good at compartmentalizing, and he's very driven for his one goal, but also that he wasn't fighting to his full ability, because Akira was so beaten down, and we all know that Rin is really a really strong fighter, so that doesn't really make sense that Rin would still lose this spectacularly. I feel like he wasn't, you know, he was also saying like go down already and all that stuff. I feel like he wasn't actually going in for the kill. You know what I mean? Rin! Rin groaned faintly and his eyelids fluttered. As Akira watched, he gave a few small blinks, then opened his eyes all the way. Eyes unfocused, he stared off into space for a while. Finally, his gaze wandered to Akira, and then his eyes went wide. He groped at his chest, searching for something. His eyes soon filled with hatred.
ダメだ。
返せよ。あれは俺のだ。
Akira shook his head.
避けるな。あれは俺のタグだ。いいから返せって。
Enraged, Rin tried to get up, but immediately grimaced and pressed a hand to his wounded
後で
thigh.
手当ての道具を取ってくる。それまでは。
Rin seized the front of his shirt. Blue eyes glared at him, bright with
何度も
resentment.
言わせんじゃねえよ。あれは俺のだ。返せ。
For some reason, Akira felt a pang of sorrow. He expelled it in a
まずは
sigh.
体を休めろよ。そんな状態で一体何ができる？
うるさい。いいから返せって言ったんだよ。
I will not let you go kill yourself. Without warning, Rin pulled back and punched him in the face. It was like a wounded animal lashing out in pain and fear. Leave him alone now and he might run away. Rin released Akira's shirt from in front with a shove and struggled to his feet.
傷が開く
He ignored the warning, of course. Blood began to seep through the bandage around his thigh. Like, Akira is now doing what Rin has been doing all this time, you know, holding him back and being like, come on, you're too fucked up to walk and all that, you know? It's just, he's really bad at taking his own advice. Akira wasn't about to watch this happen. Feeling a surge of annoyance, he got up and grabbed Rin from behind, pinning his arms together. As Rin flailed wildly, he grabbed some torn strips of curtain fabric and bound Rin's hands behind his back. He then hauled Rin by the hands, kicking and fighting, toward the second room at the back. The door was unlocked and opened easy. It resembled a spacious closet with absolutely nothing except a tiny window for light. It would do. Rin lashed out in pure desperation, but Akira shoved him inside. He immediately closed the door and leaned back against it so Rin couldn't push it open.
せめて傷が塞がるまでじっとしてろふざけんなてめえ絶対殺してやるからな
The door shook violently. He had to be throwing his entire weight against it. Obviously, he wasn't going to give up anytime soon. Looking around the room, Akira spotted a narrow metal bar lying against the wall. He somehow managed to reach it without moving away from the door. The door was built a few centimeters back from the wall, and the bar fit nicely when Akira propped it up diagonally. Rin's screams were frightening, feral, and shrill. Yeah, they really were. Like, good voice acting. Each punctured by another bang on the door. Akira stepped back and breathed a heavy sigh. It had to get a little rough, but there was no other way to contain the situation. It would be suicidal for Rin to go out there now with his injuries. Better for him to stay locked in that room, shrieking and howling. Akira wanted to go out for first aid supplies, but that would have to wait until Rin had calmed down. He sat on the floor with his back to the wall. Rin was doing a number on the door. Even with the bar, Akira couldn't be sure that it would hold. No matter what, he wouldn't hand over the tags. He needed them to clear his name, yes, but most of all, something was telling him that Rin could not be allowed to face Ilre. Yeah, I feel like Rin would just kill himself, you know? It wouldn't do anything. If he did, he would die. Yeah, exactly. Like, I wanna honor his wish, you know? I feel like I understand that he needs to be the one to get revenge and all that for himself, but also, he would die. Of course, anyone who challenged Irei would have to be prepared for death, but in Rin's case, it seemed as though death itself were his goal, as though, win or lose, he had no intention of surviving. At the same time, Akira had to wonder, why did he care so much? It changed nothing whether Rin lived or died. He might as well throw him out on the street. And yet, he didn't want to. More than anything else, he couldn't bear the thought of letting something else slip through his fingers. Keisuke. Akira had failed to save him, and now, though he knew it was selfish, he wanted Rin to live. A lump grew in his throat. He could scarcely breathe. Seeking relief, he lifted his head and watched the shuddering door. Rin. Rin's hoarse cries were starting to sound less like rage and more like grief. Akira squeezed his eyes shut. All he could do was wait as time crept by. After a while, the pounding grew weaker. Eventually, Rin stopped making any noise at all. His body must have reached its limit at last. And so too had Akira. Time for sleepies? Once he deemed it safe to venture outside, Akira ran swiftly through the rain to the hotel. He traded some pick tags for a first aid kit and bottled water and returned as soon as possible. He set his bundle of goods on the floor, then sat himself back against the wall and stared at the door to Rin's makeshift cell. Rin was so quiet now, it was hard to believe he'd fought with such violence earlier. He'd probably worn himself out and fallen asleep. Hopefully. Or was he? Akira started to get a bad feeling about this, and he considered going in to check, but he was so exhausted that he couldn't bear the thought of getting up again. He wanted to rest, if only a little. The moment that thought crossed his mind, his thoughts began to slip. He attempted to remain focused on his fears, but they drifted away from him, slipping through his fingers. At last, sleep like a sucking dog dragged Akira under. Sleep like a sucking dog? What? A sucking bog. Wait, what? I'm still confused. Huh? Dragged Akira under. Oh, like, okay, I got it. Okay, I got it. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not the smartest, alright? A dull headache greeted him when he opened his eyes. He pressed a hand to his temple and pushed himself away from the wall. His ears had by now grown used to the rain. Its sound filled the whole room, but he hardly noticed. The backs of his eyes throbbed horribly, as if responding to his headache. He cast a listless look at Rin's room. The door stood silent and still. He slowly stood up, grabbed some first aid material and a water bottle, and headed over to the door. He removed the metal brace and waited to see what would happen. When there was no reaction, he nudged the door open. A silhouette lay there in the darkness. Was Rin sleeping? He stepped inside, crouched down beside Rin, and brushed his cheek with the back of his hand. The heat made him yank his head away. After a moment, he let it fall back to touch the side of Rin's neck, then used his palm to feel Rin's forehead. He was burning, his skin was damp with sweat, and his chest rose and fell with each panting breath. He had a fever. Perhaps the gash on his thigh had gotten infected. He seemed dehydrated as well. Akira should have predicted this would happen. Angry with himself, he carefully raised Rin into a sitting position. Rin's eyebrows wrinkled, and a groan spilled out from beneath his parted lips. He wasn't conscious. Oh, baby. Perhaps he was dreaming. From time to time his mouth moved, as if he were trying to speak. Akira twisted the bottle open. He made sure he had Rin's head fully supported, then laid the mouth of the bottle against his bloodless lips. He tilted it back. But the water only spilled from Rin's mouth. He showed no sign of swallowing. Rin twisted in Akira's arms. The heat from his body was enough to forget the cold of the rain. Right now, the most important thing was to make sure he drank. Oh my god, is it the animal drink? After considering the problem from a moment, Akira raised the bottle to his own mouth and took a huge gulp. Does this actually work, though? You know, does this actually work any better? I can't believe that it does. Does it? Still supporting Rin's head, he gently pressed their lips together. Yes! Oh my god, this is exactly what I wanted! He passed, well, not you know what I mean. I didn't want it like this, but also like, yes! He passed the water to Rin little by little, taking advantage of the brief pauses between his anguished moans. Rin's throat bobbed slightly, as if he'd swallowed. Akira took another gulp of water and pressed his lips to Rin's again. Rin's eyelids twitched, and Akira felt his hot tongue slip into his mouth. Akira hesitated for a second, but it seemed as if Rin were still unconscious. His instincts were likely driving him to seek more water. He sucked at Akira's tongue like a nursing infant. Though this turn of events was somewhat disconcerting, Akira did not pull away. There was no need to be concerned, he told himself. If anything, there was an innocence to Rin's frantic licking. Partway through the second mouthful, Rin's eyes fluttered open. Fevered gaze landing on Akira, his moist lips trembled minutely.
Kazui.
Oh. Minutely, I meant. Kazui was more of a sigh than an actual word, but Akira could tell what he tried to say. Words Tomoyuki had spoken come to him. He's still got a thing for our team's number 2. Rin looks at you and sees Kazui. Whoever this Kazui was, Rin had cared enough about him to call his name from the depths of delirium. What if Rin's behavior toward Akira had been shaped by his regret for a lost friend? Friend, huh? He'd claimed that everything had been an act, but Akira suspected that, if nothing else, his feelings for Kazui were true. By the time the water bottle was half empty, Rin's breathing had begun to settle down. He still felt hot to the touch, but the expression on his face was much more relaxed. Akira wiped Rin's lips with his fingers and let out a sigh. It was still too early to assume the worst was over. He had to treat Rin's injuries. He meticulously unwound the fabric binding Rin's thigh. The gash was red and swollen, and filthy with blood and pus. Akira washed the wound out with bottled water, then cut up some bandages and soaked them in disinfectant. He wiped the open cut as tenderly as he could, then wrapped the wound again, taking care not to tie it too tight. Afterward, he watched Rin for a time. He seemed more comfortable now that he had water in his system, but his breathing still sounded frayed, and his chest rose and fell rapidly. The environment around him was far from sterile. All kinds of bacteria might have entered his wound. The infection could easily be life-threatening. When Akira had traded pig tags for first aid material, he'd noticed a variety of drugs for sale as well. Not narcotics, pharmaceutical drugs. He was pretty sure antibiotics had been among them. Akira rose, left the room, and shut the door behind him. He fished through Rin's abandoned waist pouch and took out all of his remaining pig tags. Medicine was precious. Antibiotics in particular were sure to be costly indeed. He added his own pig tags to the mix. He didn't know if it'd be enough, but it was all he could do. He made his way back to the hotel, sprinting through the pouring rain. Why was he so desperate? The question kept circling through his head, but he didn't have time to search for the answer. He had to give up all his pig tags to get the antibiotics. Even then, the old fossil manning the cloakroom still scowled as though he were getting the short end of the stick. Dripping wet from the rain, he ran into the abandoned building and headed straight to the back room. Beneath his arm, he carried a flimsy aluminum box that held a syringe and 2 vials of clear liquid. He found Rin curled up in a ball. He was breathing faster than when Akira had left. He didn't seem to have woken. Akira approached, dropped to his knees, and gently lifted Rin's arm. The intense heat he felt made him frown. He pushed up Rin's sleeve. Rin's arm was shockingly white. His blood must have gone elsewhere to fight the infection. He dampened a piece of bandage with disinfectant and wiped Rin's inner elbow. Once he'd filled the syringe with antibiotic, he removed the cap and touched the needle to Rin's arm. The needle sank into Rin's white skin. Thankfully, he hardly seemed to feel it, though his eyebrows nodded slightly. Akira squeezed the plunger until the syringe was empty, then extracted the needle and applied a bandage. It would take a little while for the medicine to work. He kept an eye on Rin, but saw no sign that he was rejecting the drug. All he could do now was wait. He put a water bottle nearby for Rin when he woke up, then tiptoed out of the storage closet. My God! Slumped against the wall out of the room, he looked out through the window. Rain was still coming down in sheets. Rin's delirious whisper echoed in his ears. His lips felt warm, and he could still recall the sensation of Rin suckling his tongue. Ah! The sensation took a long time to fade. Akira drifted in and out of sleep for a while before opening his eyes. He glanced at the window. The rain had finally eased up, and he caught a rare glimpse of the setting sun peeking through gaps in the clouds. Rising, he walked over to the back room and pressed his ear to the door. He thought he heard a faint rustle, like clothes moving. When he opened the door and looked inside, Rin wasn't lying on the floor. He was sitting against the wall in the golden sunlight, eyes half open, staring into space. His expression was empty. His eyes were like glass. As Akira stepped inside, Rin's gaze slowly flickered over to him, as if only just realized Akira was there.
大丈夫か?
Oh my God, my sweet, poor little baby. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This is so horrible. Akira crouched down beside him and felt his forehead and the side of his neck. He was still rather warm, but less feverish than before.
暑い.
Yeah. Rin murmured hoarsely, giving Akira a dull look. Akira picked up the water bottle lying on the floor, twisted off the cap, and put it to Rin's mouth. Rin raised limp hands to the bottle and began to sip. Almost immediately, he started coughing. Doubling over, he used his fingers to wipe the sides of it.
具合は?
There was no response, just that blank stare. He was probably still worn out from the
夢を.
夢?
仲間の夢。みんな元気そうに笑ってた。
There was a tinge of nostalgia in his flat, lifeless voice. Rin looked away, leaned his head back against the wall, and slowly closed his eyes.
俺に聞きたいことあるんだろ。安心しろよ。もう暴れないから。頭が痛くて、体も重いし、それどころじゃねえ。
Rin expelled a deep sigh. He really did seem exhausted.
お前の仇って、本当にイルレンなのか?
ああ。
Everyone thinks, oh God.
周りは俺が仲間を裏切ってそのまま逃げたと思ってるけど、そうじゃない。あいつに騙されて仲間が死んだ。だから俺は。
But how did he trick you? Do you know who Ilre is?
どうしてそいつがイルレだって分かったんだ?
The undefeated champion, ruler of Viskio. It was said that hardly anyone had seen the man and lived. A bitter hue entered Rin's eyes, and he cast his gaze down at the floor.
どうしてって。
そんなのわかるに決まってる。いるだろ。あいつと俺の中には同じ血が流れてるからな。
Oh,
同じ血？
it's your big brother?
兄弟なんだよ。
Half brothers.
腹違いの。
Rin's lips curled as though it were the cruelest joke. Akira was too shocked to reply. Rin blinked slowly and breathed a heavy sigh. Then he looked up, eyes narrowing as he contemplated empty air.
兄貴は昔から強かった。俺はずっと憧れてたんだ。あんな風になりたいって。いつか肩を並べたいってそう思ってた。
So his Aniki is Shiki? And he believes Shiki to be Ilrei?
けど、兄貴は最初から俺なんか眼中になかった。それでも認めてもらいたくて必死だった。その時は、もう憧れを通り越して、ライバル視みたいになってたっつうか。とにかく、俺にとって兄貴は絶対の存在で、そこへ向かってひた走ってた。それが、ブラスターに参加するようになってさ。チームの仲間とつるむのが楽しくて、嫌なこともみんな忘れられて。そしたらいつの間にか、兄貴に対する気持ちも少しずつ薄れていって。
Rin paused and he looked down with a grimace.
けど、そうじゃなかった。結局、いつまで経っても俺にとって兄貴は、絶対に手の届かない憧れの存在で。
Sounds harsh, but I absolutely understand this feeling.
心の深いとこまで、兄貴が入り込んじゃってたんだろうな。そんな
It
相手
never
が
goes
さ、
away.
初めて俺と向き合って、俺を見て、声をかけてきたりしたら、舞い上がったっておかしくないだろ。
Oh.
あいつはそれを知ってて。
チームの仲間が殺されたのは、
ああ、ペスカコシカは、恨みを買うことも多かったから、いくつか拠点を持って不定期に移動してた。けど、その時にいた拠点の場所が、兄貴にバレたんだ。
どうして？
舞い上がってたからだろ。
Rin's answer was terse and bitter. He clearly didn't want to explain further.
チームが波に乗ってた時に、いきなりすぎたバカがいてさ。そいつが、裏のヤバい方にまで首突っ込んだんだ。それで、そいつのために他のメンバーは全員巻き込まれて死んだ。俺は、ちょうどその時出かけてた。戻ってきたら、たまり場は一面血の海だった。仲間がみんな倒れてて。
Adam's apple jerked up and down as if he were struggling to swallow a lump too large for his throat.
あいつが、兄貴がいた。
I feel like, okay, this is just a theory, alright? But I feel like someone else killed his team. And Shiki was there because he thought Rin would be in danger. That's just my thought. It could be completely wrong. But I just feel like Aniki was there to check up on Rin. It's just a feeling. Just a feeling. Or something similar, you know? It can... Maybe it wasn't that sentimental. But also, like, I feel like Shiki wasn't the one who killed everyone. You know, just saying.
その時はまだビスキオなんかなくて。兄貴は首突っ込みすぎたバカの始末のために組織に雇われてた。
Oh shit. Okay, never mind then.
あいつは俺に近づいて利用したんだ。
Oh, fuck.
居場所を割り出すために。
Yikes. That is insanely sad. Rin released a shuddering breath and bit his lip. His eyes were shadowed, and each word he spoke seemed aimed more at himself than at Akira.
あいつを憎んでる。今すぐにでも殺してやりたい。
Oh god, I'm so sorry, Rin.
けど、それ以上に俺は、俺を
It's
憎ん
not
でる。
your fault. It's not your fault. It really isn't.
智之の言ってたことは間違ってない。仲間が死んだ原因は俺だ。俺がバカみたいに騙されたから。
No,
だから俺は兄貴に、イルレに挑む。それは、あいつらの敵討ちのためでもあるし、自分自身のけじめでもある。勝てないってことは分かってる。けど、
Is that really what your friends would want? Is that really helping anyone?
それで死ぬなら、その方がいいんだ。そしたら、やっと俺は、
You'll see them sooner or later,
あいつら
baby.
の顔を見て、
You will.
向こうで謝ることがで
Rin
きる。
lowered his eyes as he finished. His expression was calm, but looks were deceptive. He sought death in battle against his brother, Ilrei. To Akira, it seemed like he was trying to escape his guilt. Perhaps death could give him peace. He would no longer have to bear his burdens. But then...
本当にそれでいいと思ってるのか。
Rin shot him a dubious look.
何が？
イルレに挑むことで本当に楽になるのか。
Unless Akira was mistaken, Rin was conflicted. He seemed uncertain about the path he'd chosen. His weary gaze wavered, confirming Akira's suspicions, but then his eyes turned once again cold and hollow.
イグラで誰かとやり合った日の夜、必ず夢にあいつらが出てくるんだ。血まみれで、無言で俺をじっと見つめる。そのせいで、今はタグ取りもほとんどしてない。残ったメンバー、智之たちも。
それはただ逃げてるだけだろ。
A furious light flared in Rin's eyes.
うるせえよ。部外者に何がわかるんだよ。お前なんかに。
But I am. I kissed you.
誤解されてるなら解けばいい。償う方法だって他にあるだろう。
Yeah.
だから、知らないくせに勝手なことを言うな。何もしないでただ逃げてるわけないだろ。何言ったって無駄なんだよ。
Well, forgiveness has to start with yourself first.
死んだ奴らもみんな
カズイもそうなのか。
Rin gasped, stunned into silence. A moment later, he cursed angrily and turned away in frustration.
智之か。
You also whispered his name, sweetheart.
そんなことまで。
気を失ってる時、名前を呼んでた。そんなに俺に似てるのか。
ああ、そうだよ。初めて見た時は驚いた。話し方とかは違うけど。
カズイのこと好きだったのか。
Yeah.
そうだよ。
今も好きなんだろ。
You can't love me now? Rin glared up at him. I'm sorry. I've ruined it. I'm sorry.
だったらなんだってんだよ。気色悪いならそう言え。人の古傷えぐってなんか楽しいのかよ。
I'm trying to help you, Rin.
そいつは違うだろ。どんな奴なのか俺は知らない。けど、リンがそんなことして仇取ったとしても、喜ばないだろう。もし俺だったら、嫌だ。
Yeah. Sorry, but the people that die first are the ones that get off easy. It might be harsh to say that, but believe me, I know that surviving someone and living with survivor's guilt is infinitely worse than the one that died. Sorry. Anyway, I second that. I know he wouldn't want Rin to die. Because obviously, if Rin was the one that died, he wouldn't want him to die either, right? It's just logic. I know it's difficult to see that sometimes, but you have to look the truth into the face. Akira felt positive that Rin wasn't lying. Both the brother he admired and his comrades had rejected him. This had taught him to be wary of human contact, to hide behind a mask. Afraid of getting hurt again, he decided to die alone. But in truth, he wanted someone to save him. At last, that was how it seemed to Akira. When things look bad and your back's against the wall. It's okay, Ren. We can do this together. I also need to defeat Ilrei. We'll do this together. Rin hissed, eyes fixed on the floor.
黙れよ。お前なんかに何がわかるんだよ。
俺はお前を死なせるつもりはない。
黙れ。
Rin shook his head hard, as if to clear it of unwanted
ほっ
thoughts.
といてくれ。もう、俺に構うな。
I won't. I love you, Rin.
出てけよ。今すぐ、俺の前から消えろ。出てけ。
Nope. His ragged breaths had begun to sound like sobs. I still have another syringe for you. Akira slowly rose to his feet and left the room. Really? Standing with his back to the door, he considered his position. Without question, it was better to tell someone how you felt more than to let things end without even trying. But no matter how you bared your heart, in the end it couldn't save you from the heavy burden of regret. Keisuke. Sinking into a crouch by the door, he exhaled slow and deep. Akira still didn't understand his feelings towards Rin, but there was one thing he did know. He wanted Rin to live. And he wanted Rin to kiss him one more time. Is this Rin root? Is it? I can't tell. Sorry. Anyways, on that lovely note, I hope this episode wasn't too heavy, because I feel rather heavy now. It was, sorry, but I know I'm trying to keep it light by making jokes and all that, but it was really, really heavy. And Rin is my favorite character, period. Get something nice to drink, do something nice for yourself, have a lovely day. Love you guys, and I hope to see you for the next episode. Bye-bye!